Welcome to PolyCast, a civilization podcast focused on game strategy.
Dan Q.
Makalua.
The Me and Team.
Mad Jin. With guest co-host
Bruno Prado Santos.
E3 last year, I was able to play Total War Rome 2, and that was...
All I heard Magin say was, as an E3 alumnus, I can tell you.
Did you hear brag?
Brag.
Welcome to episode 204. We have regular co-host Dan Q.
As eclectic as the topics we cover.
Mad Jin.
For Dan's birthday, I think a maple syrup cannon.
Makalua.
It has to compete with my orbital facepalm cannon.
The Me and Team.
Greetings, subjects and future subjects.
And Bruno Prado Santos. Mega Bears fan guide for the Zulus. As always, it's a very, very detailed and nice guide. Unique units and unique buildings. It explains a little about their perks, how their unique ability gives them some discount for the maintenance of melee units. It explains how it has an exception to some units that are melee but not technically, like gunpowder units. It goes a lot about the promotions, how it earns promotions a lot faster with experience and their unique building, which is very hard to say the name.
I believe it's Iconda.
Iconda, yeah. And their unique ability is awkward to say too, so I'll not try.
I believe it's Ikla.
Ikla, yeah, it's very awkward. It has this little table here, very detailed, very nice.
Oh, of the flanking bonuses from the Buffalo promotion?
Yeah, I'm going very fast over the whole thing because it's a very long article.
Just to add what Bruno is saying, the Iconda is the barracks replacement, and it's going to give you plus 15 experience for newly trained units, which is the same as a barracks, but it also grants, and we already alluded to it, the unique line of Buffalo promotions to newly trained pre-gunpowder melee units. That Buffalo promotion, that is unique to the Zulu, and it is not the, what I call, roll the dice promotion of the Indonesians, where they are actually always useful to some degree. Imagine that.
Mega Bears fans mentions that it's obviously very, very useful to go full militarily with the Zulus because of all these awesome promotions and discounts.
Your melee units cost 50% less maintenance with the unique ability of Ikla, and all units receive 25% experience to earn their next promotion, and then they get unique promotions on top of that. So as Mega Bear Fan says, they are geared towards pre-gunpowder warfare and acquiring massive amounts of powerful promotions. Not to mention the fact that the Impy unique unit has no resource requirement at all. And the AI spams them like nobody's business, and it is typically effective, if nothing more than noise on the map. I call them noise on the map.
Mega Bear Fan also mentions the Kilimanjaro, which would be a nice natural wonder to have nearby if you're the Zulu, because it gives you awesome mobility along with the promotions. But it's a very rare scenario too.
It is, and I think in that situation, when you take Buffalo Line promotion, you will have +1 movement.
Yeah.
And then if you get the natural wonder that you're talking about, Mount Kilimanjaro, then if you move on any hill tile, then you will have double movement. So this can be particularly powerful to use as a move in and attack and back off, like mounted units. Some general mounted units can be like move in, attack, and then move back. And then the flanking bonuses are, you combine all of that together, and if you get surrounded with Impy, it depends on the age of your unit, that's true, but if it's a comparable era or less, you might as well tell the unit to say its prayers, it's about to meet its maker.
Yeah, that's right. Also, the commerce unique units, the Landesknechts, I don't know how to say that.
No, I believe you got it right, yeah.
They get very nice with Zulu promotions too. You can pillage the hell out of your enemy. They cost very little because of the reduced unit maintenance, and they pillage for more gold, so that's just a lot of gold you get.
Yeah, you get yourself down the commerce line, and then I believe it's I forget the exact name for it, but after the commerce opener, I believe it's one of the next ones that you can take.
Mercenary Army.
That's it, thank you, Mercenary Army. And so if you're busy using all of these impy, I mean, even if you're not taking cities, even if you're going in and decimating armies, which probably includes pillaging, and then probably capturing some cities as well, or even if you don't capture cities, in peace deals, give me your cities and or give me gold. Then you can use all that gold that you've accumulated to buy Landsknechts, and then if you use that in combination with impies, oh man, I don't think the AI does a very good job in terms of that combination. But just pure impy spam, yes. And if you're a human player, I think you can connect the dots between the Landsknechts and the impy, and it's just, it's rage if you're on the receiving end.
Yeah, since they're so cheap, you can have all of a sudden a lot of impies upgraded, and then you buy some Landsknechts. I don't know how to say that. And then, like, in 2 or 3 turns, you can hit like 4 or 5 cities and get a peace deal for like 2 or 3 of them at least.
Yeah, have your Landsknechts in front, and then you can have your impies move in and then back out again. And it is just, oh man.
There are so many of them, you can hit multiple cities. It's very easy.
Mega Bears fan points out that they are exclusively focused towards minigame aggression and conquest, and I think that is extremely accurate. Now, some people might say, but early on, they're not really that distinct. Wouldn't they be better if they were even earlier in terms of earlier aggression and conquest for the snowball effect? Well, knowing that the MP is your unique unit, you, as the player of it, you push towards getting that technology in order to be able to get it. It's the pikeman replacement, right? So civil service, right?
Yes.
And if you have done well to claim some territory, either peacefully or some other wars otherwise, the snowball effect, it comes soon enough that you can raffle stomp over, to use the technical term, by the way, did you know, some very nearby units. And then if you build more of these units and have them earlier and you use them in combat more, then the snowball effect of the promotions that they get at the outset, combined with experience in war, and then clearing out carpets of doom of other civilizations, either offensively or defensively. The Impi are very good for an offensive defense as well. So even if you're not going for a domination victory, you can still use these effectively for defense as well.
Yeah, and I think if you go honor very soon, you can use to full extent the fact that the Eucla will give more movement to warriors, to spearmen, so you can start warring very soon, and just get to impies and be the ice on a cake, you know.
Delicious, delicious cake.
Yeah, because you can always start with just mass-producing spears with the Akandi, and then just upgrade them.
Yeah.
Aaron90495 asks in our chat over on Ustream, because these episodes are recorded live, what's a good split between Impy and ranged? Maybe 60-40? I always find myself building too many Impies, and a lot die when I try to take cities with them. That is the thing. It's not build Impies and only Impies. It's that you can lessen the number of iron-based units, lessen the number of swordsmen and longswordsmen you're going to have in terms of melee units, and have your Impies be the melee units, but you are still going to want composite bows, catapults, but, you know, composite bows, and then you push yourself and into cannons. Oh, man, cannon plus Impy.
Impies, they upgrade to riflemen, right? You can upgrade the Landsknechts to the special barracks lancers.
That's true.
Upgraded Impy to riflemen, upgraded Landsknechts to lancers plus cannons, all of these promotions. Oh, wow.
The unique line of Buffalo promotions that don't go away when you upgrade them.
Mega Bears fan, talks about, and I kind of alluded to as well, that if you're worried about warmonger penalties, because if you piss off too many civs too quickly, their combined force, either military and or economic, because maybe they're not going to want to trade with you, and you are going to be wanting to field large armies, so you are still going to have military costs. Rather than taking some cities, you might be able to force them in a peace deal to take those cities, and then, of course, then you won't have the warmonger penalty. You'll still have the delay before you can actively do anything in those cities, either as puppet or annexed. But that's starting to play a little bit in terms of the diplomacy game as well, that I would say you're not going to be able to say, okay, I'm going to start my war against the world, however you define that world, Pangea, continent-based map, whatever, and then just go from beginning to end if you are intending to go for a domination win. There are times when you are going to have to back off. You're always going to need to know the lay of the land. You're going to want to see who it is that you are looking to piss off and who are that to-be pissed-off Civ's friends. Because if you alienate them too much, then trying to get them back on your side, if you can ever get them back on your side, is going to be too costly. So there may be times that, and this is my favorite part of this write-up, and people who know me will be like, yes, Dan. If there are any city-states that are not the protectorates of any major civs that you want to remain peaceful with, then you can use your larger-than-average defensive army to camp near their borders and demand tribute on a regular basis.
Yep. When you have volume, it helps. One of the other things is he mentions in here, and we didn't really cover, is that the MPs, because of their bonuses, they're competitive with muskets. So you don't have to be like extra concerned that you're still on a pike-based unit while your enemies are going muskets. I mean, you're not going to get more powerful than them, but your MPs aren't necessarily you can at least keep them away from killing you completely, unlike if it was just as pike.
And there's the fact that when you upgrade all those imps to riflemen, your upkeep will go up an awful lot because they're gunpowder, right? So I think that's a factor to expand really quick with Shaka and then just stop there and try to start making friends. You know?
Well, I mean, otherwise just take other people's lands and then you have lots of money.
Yeah, there's that.
Mega Bears fan, of course, also gets into the flip side of a civilization, which is if you're not playing as them, you're playing against them. And we do know that the Shaka AI favors early unit rushes.
Oh, of course.
Unless you play on random personalities necessarily. But still, let's just assume that it's standard fare. Because they are geared towards early to mid-game aggression, says Mega Bears fan, quote, if they are your immediate neighbor, then you should expect war to come fairly early.
Yes.
Unquote. It's like, well, yes, really.
It's just not the perfect Civ game without Shaka. It's impossible. Yeah. Shaka needs to be in every Civ game, and everyone adores starting next to Shaka. Heart.
As Phil continues to write his love letter, Mega Bears fan says your best defenses are strong, fortified melee units or ranged unit garrison in your cities. Try to position your defensive units such that they cannot be surrounded so that you can avoid the devastating flanking bonuses that the Zulu accumulate. Yes, and then using coastlines, mountains, and rivers to block Zulu movements and negate his speed advantage can make a huge difference in protecting you from this inevitable assault. And then, of course, towards the end, there's also this. If you have a civilization with a strong naval focus, you can usually take advantage of the fact that Shaka rarely builds a sizable quote-unquote. Let's just put it this way. Build a navy, assuming that there are some Zulu cities that you can actually attack.
Not even just cities. Like, if you have a Gallius fleet and he's attacking your cities on the coast, or at least getting closer to them, you can use those Galliuses, just go full bombardment, and a Gallius can wipe a pike in one shot if it's properly upgraded. MPs don't do well versus ranged damage, or at least big range damage. I mean, they do get the promotion for it, but it's only 10%.
True that, and then your Galliuses that are bombarding, the MPs aren't going to be able to do anything about it, even if they get beside them. Aw, I'm sorry, were you expecting to meet a composite bow? So sad, too bad. Now, there is a part of his discussion here that I'm thinking, at least based on my experience, man, this is going to be situational. The first part here, okay, it's about the World Congress. It shouldn't be hard to impose an embargo on the Zulus. Yeah, fair enough.
True.
By that time, the MP, even with their promotions, are likely to be outclassed by opposing rifles, cannons, and cavalry. Okay. Embargoing their trade and proposing standing army tax in the World Congress. Whoa. Just as a caution here, check to see what other civs on the map think of that as well.
Yeah.
And what they could do to you. I find that is generally opposed by the AI with a passion. Explicative insert here.
Yeah, because they like building big armies.
And if you've got the Zulu on the map, you might be building, and they might be building more of an army than they would otherwise to try to suppress that aggression, at least against them. So that would be really bad.
Yeah. I mean, if you're the only one not building an army, sure. But, yeah, everybody else might have issues.
In which case, you survive this long against the Zulu, you deserve a gold star.
The Great Wall is noted to help nullify some of the mobility, but I actually think it's the exact opposite. Great Wall is more of a for the Zulu because they do have 3 movement, which means they can move 2 places unless it's all hills, in which case they weren't moving very far anyways. That extra +1 movement does allow them to move through the Great Wall a little better than anybody else. It does slow it down as long as it's not, if you're completely surrounded by open terrain, sure, you slowed them down a little by 1 hex. But otherwise, if it's all a rough terrain in the neighborhood, you're not really slowing them down because they would have been chewing up all of that movement anyways by moving through the rough terrain.
And it does nothing to combat their bonuses, Buffalo or otherwise, which they accumulate like candy.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the best defense is having a reasonable quantity of both ranged units and some siege and ranged naval units. That should be enough.
Yeah, it just depends on the map. I mean, if you can put a nice blockade in, so if you have a mountain range between you and them, and there's only a few spots to be able to get through, then as long as you don't let the Zulu get flanking on your units that are gonna try and lock it down, then yeah, you can lock down for a while and just keep switching the unit out that's doing the defense.
And again, back to the galleasses, if you are playing on an ever-increasingly more water map, then the impressiveness that it is the Zulu
also disappears.
Goes down.
Yeah, I mean...
proportionately.
Well, high water map is just, you don't really want a land-based army anyways. So yeah, the Zulu just stopped becoming useful.
Mega Bears fan also talks about, in terms of wonders, talks about Statue of Zeus being a top priority. That's kind of like a nice bonus, but I would not consider it a top priority, no. Not on top of everything else, not when I could be constructing something else to help my horde. And that Statue of Zeus, by the way, plus 10% combat when attacking cities. Now, Brandenburg Gate and Pentagon for decreased military maintenance on top of the already decreased military maintenance. I'm talking about the Pentagon specifically on that point. Okay.
Yeah.
Or Kremlin.
Well, I mean, keep in mind that the maintenance tends to just disappear over time anyways because of the super costs can go up over time. So if you're going to be big, you might as well add more discounts.
I think early in the game, instead of the Statue of Zeus, I usually prefer to go for the Heroic Epic very fast because that makes a real difference.
Yeah, it depends on the difficulty level, but yeah, Heroic Epic better on higher difficulty levels because the Statue of Zeus, for the most part, will just disappear.
Yeah, there's the...
Unless you're, lucky enough that not a single AI went on her.
And for those wondering listing, yes, Heroic Epic, National Wonders, you got to have a barrack in all of your cities. And as with all National Wonders, the cost goes up the more there are in the Empire. So something sooner rather than later, maybe constructing it while you're waiting to get to civil service after you've, built some spearmen that you're going to upgrade to MP anyway, where all newly trained non-air units receive the morale promotion, which improves combat strength by 15%. So yeah, on top of all of the other promotions the Zulu get, unique to them and otherwise, based on the snowball effect that we talked about before, definitely worth the hammers and the time more than statues. I will agree with that.
Yeah, it's useful throughout the whole game, right?
Yep, and even naval units get it.
Oh, there's also this social policy called honor.
What?
And
why would you take that as the Zulu?
No.
Dun, 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 dun.
I don't know, must have something to do with a certain combat bonus. Not just against, right away against barbarians like we talked about before when you open it. But, I mean, that's kind of like, what about it? Yeah, well, then there's discipline for plus 15% combat strength for melee units which have another military unit in an adjacent tile. Oh, wait, what type of units are MP again? And I think they already actually have that nice flanking bonus inherent. Oh, look at that. Multiplier. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to flank your flanking bonus?
Yep. Just keep adding flanking bonuses and just watch things disappear.
Cue the trollolol song.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is one thing that you have to pay more attention to. Like with most other units and places, you're just going to move forward, maybe put 1 or 2 flanks in and then keep attacking. With the Zulu, you want to do all your movement before you start attacking because you're going to want to just keep bumping up all those flanks as much as possible. Makes the game much easier.
What Majin is saying is that you need to go for surround and pound as frequently as possible.
Mm-hmm.
How may the corporation serve you?
Beyond Earth E3 stuffs.
Ever since Firaxis made Alpha Centauri almost a decade ago, we've wanted to take the franchise back to space, and the stars aligned, and I think we talked a number of years off.
If you can do more puns, that's great. Just keep the puns coming. That's great.
Right.
Quite a few links here. I have a few of them up. First one I have up is by Dan Stapleton. He played out first 50 turns and has some article write-up about it here. Apparently with the natives, unsurprisingly, they are not necessarily instantly hostile.
Barbarians in traditional Civ are sort of early game speed bumps, but the aliens in Beyond Earth are a faction that you have to deal with. You don't have direct lines of communication with them, but depending on how aggressive you are towards them or the kind of land you encroach on, they'll react to that differently.
Although they might take pot shots at you, you can work with them if you're with Harmony.
The aliens are an integral part of the game the entire way through. And there's this neat moment in the game where they transition from becoming a nuisance or an all-out threat to an instrument to wage war in a different way against your opponents. And as you interact with the aliens, as you antagonize them, they begin to field more complicated, sophisticated tactical operations against you. And they're definitely a living, breathing part of the world. They've been there a lot longer than you have, and they're dangerous.
Yeah, he mentions the tech tree, which is more of an intimidating tech web. Good. I want it to be intimidating. I want there to be some strategy to the tech tree again. It's been lacking. I think it's been lacking all along for a long time. And then it's apparently the human lands first or something like that, given equal start time. And that's all I'm picking up from this.
To add to the IGN article, on the part about being, the only human colony on the planet, he says, I can only imagine how disruptive it'll be to have an extremely advanced colony drop onto the map out of nowhere in the mid to late game, presenting a new threat or ally from an unexpected location. And I'm thinking, well, it talks about that when they arrive later,
of course,
they have some bonuses, right? And that's to help compensate for the fact that they are arriving later. And I think maybe some of the apprehension and what he is getting across there is he's thinking the AI already gets what we affectionately call dirt bonuses. Do they really need more? And I think he views this as on top of, there are already other bonuses on top of being AI. Sure, that's part of balance. We'll just have to wait and see. He acknowledges he only played for 50 turns. We knew that this option could be turned off in terms of just have everybody start at once. You don't have to have that delay. But apparently in multiplayer, there's no choice. It's disabled for multiplayer. When you say it's disabled for multiplayer, then everybody starts at once, which makes sense for most MP games because there probably isn't.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would want to sit around for like 30 turns while you guys putter around and then drop in the game.
Yeah, that would be a little weird. Not to mention...
Probably bad for balance, too. Like, if you... some of the early Civ games had something where if you wiped out a civilization, like another one would spawn. I think it was back in Civ 2 that happened. But of course it was worthless because it couldn't defend itself. I think they would have to buff these landing later nations quite a bit for them to even be viable. I'll be interested to see if they can actually make them viable compared to just starting outright.
I'm thinking that, if you're going to have this delayed start, then you're probably going to give boosts to those people who are starting late. Otherwise, yeah, ooh, a new guy dropped in next to me after like 50 turns. Yeah, army stack push. Oh well.
I feel like that will probably happen at first anyway. I'd be surprised if they balance it well. And that's not a slight to them. It's just hard to do. Yeah. This is how Civ snowballs.
Yep. So whoever was there first wins.
The first of three things that Stapleton said that makes Beyond Earth a distinct and exciting Civ game from the start that's different from Civ 5.
You have the nicer quote-unquote barbarians, possibly, depending on how you treat them, certainly.
Oh, here we go again. You're calling alien life forms quote-unquote barbarians, Phil. How dare you? That is not politically correct.
I am with the supremacy faction, so screw them.
We are the alien life form. In fact, it is their planet, you Earthist.
Not anymore. Not since I landed on it.
I'm going to also point out that he said that by the end of 50 turns, only 3 of the 7 competing colonies had been founded on that one. I'm probably guessing that's difficulty level related.
Yeah.
Probably.
I would expect high difficulty level starts to basically have everybody on the map really quickly, as compared to like Settler or whatever, where like you could play the whole game and no one will show up.
Although that'll make the whole early rush dynamic very interesting, because in like previous Civ games, if you play on middle to low difficulty levels, you can just chain rush everything, and that's probably not going to be too viable now. Or maybe it is, and you'll just only have one opponent ever, so it's super easy. I don't know. We'll see.
Greg Tito in the Escapist article. When all my colleagues all got up for lunch, I stuck around to play through it again. So he played another game from turn 0 to 50. And I was like, good on you. He said that he was surprised to encounter an amalgamation of concepts found in Civ 5 in a science fiction setting. And I'm thinking, oh, I guess you hadn't read Earth before you ever played it then, right? I mean, if that's what you want to do, you didn't want spoilers, quote unquote. Okay, I understand that. All players start with one tech, and you can choose to research any of 6 technologies in a web surrounding the start or a secondary branching tech. The related techs or branches cost significantly less than researching in a whole new direction, so it encourages players to choose a path rather than cherry-pick from all over.
Have a technology progression that feels sci-fi enough, but that's also familiar enough that you can understand what it does, or that it's not so fantastical that it's not believable. So our solution to that was to have incremental progress starting from more conventional technologies.
Technologies are also the main way you choose to influence your Civ's affinity. Affinities are similar to ideology choices in Brave New World. How you complete or interact with quests will also push you down a certain track, unquote. And when we had Dennis Shirk on as part of episode 200 of PolyCast talking about Beyond Earth, he said, I wish people in the industry, paraphrasing only slightly, talk more about the quest system. So Dennis is getting his wish. And for the rest of us Civ fans too, apparently. Now, the next sentence may have Phil going, which is the random nature of the quest seems like it could backfire.
Depends.
But the designers had already thought of that. The game AI is smart enough to see which way you are learning and offers quests and storytelling moments which reflect your choices to give you the opportunity to fully embrace an affinity. And I thought that's quite a bold statement for a preview, even a hands-on preview.
Yeah, so you have to kind of hope that they eventually finish the programming to make sure that the game goes, which way are you going? Okay, shove. And if you're trying not to go in any one direction, the game's like, how about we'll shove you this way anyways?
The quest system was a little rough in its presentation, but was an interesting addition to the Civ formula, quote unquote. Although I did like his acknowledgement that there is a quest log that allows you to check what the objectives were, what he'd already completed, compares it to World of Warcraft.
That's good, because I can't imagine trying to play a Civ game at the same time and trying to keep track of all the quests as if it was in that.
Yeah, it would make little sense to have a bunch of quests but not tell you that you could write them down.
Especially if you were playing a single-player game, you came back to it a week later. What was I doing?
Yeah.
Hey, true nerds will still use Notepad, okay?
Yeah. Use Notepad.
All right.
No way. True nerds will have like a second screen up, or they'll have their Excel spreadsheet in the background anyway, so they'll just add a column for this.
Mm-hmm.
Just like they have columns for everything else in their Excel spreadsheet.
What was I doing?
All of these details that Greg has described were just appetizers to me. Here's the main course. A city, or outpost as it's called in Beyond Earth, didn't get founded immediately. Each turn, a new hex joined the city's working radius until it finally was founded 6 turns in. This delayed founding of settlements can be used to my advantage in war, as an incomplete outpost isn't yet owned by its faction. That means you can attack them with impunity. File that one for future backstabbings. Greg, you pointed this out before the game was released and to the developers, because why?
Well, I would point out that...
that doesn't sound like an accidental feature.
I think it's also an inference.
It's not like, oh, hey, don't mind me. I'm going to, settler rush this city, and I'm going to place it right next to your stuff during a war, and it's on a hill. And guess what? I range attack. Slaughter. Woo! And now you have to beat up, later in the game, a highly defended unit, or a highly defended city that now can shoot you.
This might also be a deliberate nerf to both forward settling and annoying city placement settling behavior in general. Mm-hmm. Like, if you do that, you have to really defend it, not just, give it a passing defense, because the city itself is pretty resistant to attack already, because it happens to be on a hill or some crap. And now you'll probably actually have to protect it, and you can punish AI if they forward settle you without huge diplomatic repercussions worldwide, I suppose.
I don't like your outpost. Kick.
Get off my lawn.
See a potential argument between Mackie, who I know has said that she's looking to go the Harmony affinity path in Beyond Earth, and of course Phil is supremacy because, he's Phil. Every time you destroy a siege worm, you get a science boost. And we know how much Mackie likes the Messenger of the Gods pantheon in Civ, so now she's going to be torn, because a Harmony player would not destroy a siege worm.
Harmonious death.
Yeah, but how big is this boost, actually, is the question.
Well, yeah, and how do you get the boost?
Mm-hmm.
By destroying a siege worm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we go back to how much is it? I mean, if it's just like a little tiny percent thing, then who cares?
No, you must have indignation now.
Mm-hmm. And how many siege worms are you going to run into?
Thank you, Grim.
Yep. Are siege worms all over the map, or are they just here and there every once in a while?
Oh, this gives me the idea that what if you're able to build siege worms, and then you could sit there and constantly build them and destroy them?
Mackie, let's do a cheesy hug box. You can feed me siege worms, and I'll feed you something else. And then we'll rush Dan.
So, Mackie, are you describing like the ability to plant forests and then chop for hammers and then rinse them? Is that what you're doing?
Except it's siege worms and you get science, yes.
I think Phil approves.
Yes.
Yeah. It's for science. Go.
Better be careful with how valuable you make the siege worms for the science.
Yeah,
already calling for nerfs to your not your faction. I see how it is.
I mean, in the one article, it says, siege worms were vicious in their attacks and were really tough to take down. So, depending on how good the player was in the first place, that could just be a self-limiting thing. Punch a siege worm, it kills your stuff. You might get science eventually, but you lost half the stuff that you had.
No way, we can take them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they're talking about alien units. Basically, if you kill too many of them, they get actively hostile to you.
Okay, that's a good thing, because you didn't really get that with Alpha Centauri.
So it just depends on how much you have to kill them before they get openly hostile to everybody. And can you mess with a Harmony player by just, sit there and kill every single alien on the planet, and then they happen to have...
I was about to ask, is that faction limited? Do the aliens have a memory for each faction on the planet? Or is it just, some supremacy guy slaughtering all the aliens causes them to hate everyone?
Yep.
I'm certain they have a memory, but is it memory like a goldfish or, a real memory?
Yeah.
Okay, let's compare it to Civ 5. Is it a city-state memory?
The article's saying that they might as well be their own faction in some ways. We'll see how that pans out.
The aliens win! Everybody's dead.
We've reached a conclusion.
Speaking of factions, why do the Civ franchise veterans love Alpha Centauri so?
What?
Because it was awesome and full of...
Mackie will now serenade us with her Alpha Centauri love song.
No. And also, first person, who is this? Magian? I don't know. Who was asking this over on CFC? He said, "Hi, I'm relatively new to the Civ franchise. Only started playing with BTS. He's often seen Smack referred to as the jewel of the series. But he wants to know why us rusty veterans love Alpha Centauri so much." It's like, what? Rusty veterans, hey.
It is an old game, Mackie. But
Are you rusty?
I know what you feel like when you read that.
Rusty veterans. Seriously.
Mackie, why are you focusing so much on one word in an entire post?
Look at us old folks. We played Nintendo 64 and Super Nintendo.
I know.
What's a Nintendo? What?
Yeah.
It's like, listen, you youngin', I was playing games before you were even a pixel.
It's like that now, though. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah. Weirdly questioning the success of Smack. Smack speaks for itself on its success.
Yeah, we know it's a little hard to go back and play now, so you don't quite see it the same way as as when people played it when it actually came out, because it was more equivalent levels of technology and stuff. And whereas this is 15 years later, so it seems a bit dated, but that's because it's 15 years later.
I do think some of the appeal is the combination of the fresh look and the moral stuff that you get in it, which you don't have that in Civ. It's not as much of a theme, especially in the Civ 2, Civ 3 days. Even in Civ 4, you can go slavery and your consequences for that are minimal. If you have events on, you can get some trash events related to it, but otherwise it's mostly extremely, what's the word for it? Abstracted penalties for being in slavery. You demand emancipation eventually. But in Alpha Centauri, you have some real moral choices to make, and you can do some extra evil stuff too. The future tech, nerve stapling, nukes, you name it, it's all in there.
And there's a lot in the background of just like the quotes from the other leaders that go into the tech. That you get when you get a tech. And it gives you an idea of the personalities they would actually have. They
That's
have a lot more
true.
personality. At the time, we still had fairly generic leaders when you played against other ones. It's like Civ 2 before Civ 3 came out, so they didn't have as much flavor to the personality, but this gave them a lot. So you learned
Civ
to...
3 is nowhere near the personality that Alpha Centauri had.
Oh,
I'd say
yeah,
that
I
even
know.
Civ 4 didn't have the personality. And yeah, you've had your Montezumas and Shakas, but they were mostly just some numbers under the hood. Like, there's no story behind each leader. There's no true, like, in-game depicted reason for their choices. That Civ 5 is the first in the series that really has anything close to what Alpha Centauri had in terms of the leader depth.
As much as we talk about hating Monty and Shaka, Miriam, oh my god. She shows up, it's like, you have to die right now. Okay, right now while your bonus is still low before this becomes just a stupid slaughter fest.
Bruno, did you play Alpha Centauri?
No, not actually.
Oh, so that's why you're so quiet. You're taking notes. Okay.
He's not that old.
I'm
LOL.
just listening. I'm listening to the rusty veterans.
Ah.
I'm sorry, Bruno. You're breaking up. What was that?
User left your channel. What?
And there was unique features which haven't exactly come back in other Civ games, but there was the unit workshop thing where you could customize.
Of
like,
course.
At the time, it was still back when you had to put a defense unit in the city, so you could customize something that would do that had, like, what was it? It was like a promotion, but it was police, so it was more effective at keeping your unrest down. But then you could take the same unit, give it more offensive capability, and go out and go on patrol, like to keep mine worms out of your stuff. Really, it had the social policy tree before we had the social policy trees.
Yeah. And a lot of it is the depth of story and the depth of lore, which was not in any Civ game.
Yeah.
I mean, just by depth of lore, you start getting people, writing short stories about their gameplay and other stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And it starts building lore like, most other games that actually have more depth to it than press button kill.
Yes, no depth of that before or since until now.
Yeah,
that's how I ended up on Appleton, because of the democracy games, because everybody had factions and they were making up their own colorful stories for their factions.
And it was from Mackie's participation on Appleton that she was invited to be on PolyCast and accepted. So I still think Mackie's conflicted about that, and that's okay.
Wait, what did I be conflicted about?
Well, the fact that it led you to being invited onto PolyCast and then you said yes. So
Dan hates himself today, I guess?
No.
Yeah. It's his birthday. He can do what he wants.
It is true. We are recording this on my birthday. Yes.
Oh, that's why Dan's with me on the Rusty Veterans thing. I see.
Yeah. He got old. Back in the day, it was awesome. Just like, Martin
Alvito?
Yeah. In one of the later posts, he actually talks about it. And it says, like, back in the day, it's just like Mom, Master of Magic. It was super big in the day. It was different. It was huge comparatively to everything else around it. And that's what got the draw. If you slap it up now, it's still a good game, but it won't have nearly as much as, like, some other games now.
Yeah, because all the stuff we do in strategy games has really evolved since then.
But you could easily just polish the graphics and fix some bugs and release it, and it'd still do fairly well, unlike a lot of other games.
If this podcast had video, we would have like a pop-up video moment right now where there'd be a trivia box that would say, did you know Martin Alvito was a past guest on PolyCast episodes 127 and this is 154?
This is not much music. You may not do that. Bad.
Dan is Mr. Pop-Up
listeners,
Facts.
we don't video directly on the show.
Although you can imagine the pop-up.
Yeah, if you want to do that, I won't stop you.
Is there Space Gandhi?
It's Space Gandhi. There's not Space Gandhi, unfortunately.
Is salt overpowered in the context of Civilization 5 from Ritzy Cat?
Okay, to answer the question, and so we can move on to the next topic, yes.
It's one of the few things that makes plains tolerable.
Or desert tolerable. But it gets OP. It's actually more OP on certain base terrain than others. Like salt in the desert, not really that OP. It just makes desert livable. Salt not in the desert starts becoming very OP.
And as Ritzy Cat also notes, salt usually comes in veins of 2 to 3 hexes and sometimes 4. And it only requires mining to improve. So to me, the early technology to improve, plus the fact that it often comes in vein of more than 1, plus the fact that it's a luxury, those 3 things combined, yes, it is OP. But then the question becomes, is this quote-unquote good OP or bad OP? In other words, is your leverage from that early in the game, is that the snowball effect going to be so substantial that there really isn't much of anything else that you're going to have to do other than to recognize, to get mining, improve salt resources, and then start trading excesses to other people?
Yeah, pretty much. Because salt gives lots of food, which means since you're getting food and production, you're able to build things and grow at the same time, and they're definitely going to be better than any of the other resources in the neighborhood. So yeah, you just sit there, work salt as your guys come up, grow super tall, which means you get even more population to produce more production and more science. So yeah, it's basically a granary-based start where you'd have like a ton of wheat in your neighborhood, but you actually get production and gold out of it on top of that.
And then if you want to add that secondarily, but still worth noting here at the outset, if you're thinking about faith generation, the Earth Mother Pantheon will give you +1 faith for each one of those resources, plus any copper or iron you may also have, and ore.
Mm-hmm.
The good times just keep on rolling with salt.
Yep.
And of course, this thread, I wouldn't say degenerated, although it did to some degree. Because part of the argument is, well, it's historically accurate that salt is OP.
Oh, historically accurate.
Let's assume for a moment that is anything whatsoever. That does not necessarily make good gameplay. And why does it often actually make not good gameplay?
If you're in the desert, you throw Petra in. And whee!
Yeah, now Petra comes up from Craig Mack, where he says that desert hills with Petra are also OP, especially if they happen to be by a water source or have a sheep on them. But at least desert hills require you to make a wonder, though. Salt is just straight-up craziness from the start. Front-loaded civs dominate every game. Civs that require time to build up and gain steam are just not as good. And that's the important. It's not that they're not good. They're just not as good. And you're not going to be able to get yourself on a level playing field by doing anything else other than re-rolling and hoping that you will then be blessed with a ridiculous amount of salt.
Yep.
To quote Phil from many, many episodes ago, why is your luck skill so bad?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it comes down to when you have no salt.
Man, you got to put more points in the luck skill.
An interesting take on this, looking at this from another angle, maybe from the inside looking out rather than outside looking in, not your typical. That's the username. He does not finish what it is that he's not typical, but okay. It is not so much that salt is OP, but how laughably underpowered calendar and trapping luxuries are. Mining and sailing luxuries are fine. You could rebalance by boosting the low or bringing down the high. And I'm thinking, okay, I must admit, I can't remember the last time I encountered someone saying something was underpowered, at least not in terms of a resource, but I think it's just comparatively how underpowered calendar and trapping are, excluding our whole past discussion about bananas. Other than that, no. Salt is OP, whether you compare it to calendar resources or trapping resources or nothing at all. It just is absolute. It needs a change. And there's no one answer to change either. There are a number of ways that you can address this.
Yeah, it maybe would be better if it gave you an extra gold instead of an extra production when you improved it.
There's that possibility, although I wonder, given the taking away of gold off the map through Brave New World, right, and the introduction of trade routes and losing the gold on the water, that some people would say, and I could see them arguing, well, it's not hammer, but it's gold, and so the end result is the same, that it still ends up being OP.
I think you should just buff it by giving it a gold, too.
I'm just waiting for someone to say, just don't make it a luxury resource.
Yeah, there's that.
I'm thinking, I think that's a little extreme. To me, if you're going to make one change and one change only because you want a simple answer, I don't necessarily think this is the best answer, but then just make it so it's not such an early technology that you're able to improve it. I don't know what that other technology would be. I mean, the mining makes sense for the salt, but again, this is about gameplay, not realism, so you could work with that, make it a little farther down the technology tree. Although it still doesn't address the other big issue, which I'd said before to me, which is in addition to being workable early, how many times it comes up frequently. And that would be a relatively easy change, actually, in the code, in terms of if you are going to have salt, what's the frequency of salt? I'm sure we mentioned this in the past, right when salt was introduced, and I believe the comment was, remember how we used to have a lot of cows on the map? Way too many cows? There's now way too much salt. And time has proven since the introduction of salt in Civ 5 that it is OP. So we're kind of revisiting this topic, and not just as an aside to another topic, but a topic itself, because it's still around and it's proven itself to be too big for its britches. Aaron, once again, 90495. The AI that starts with salt almost always is the runaway of the game, or at very least a runaway of the game, a runaway that you are going to have to contend with sooner rather than later. He suggests in terms of a change, or give it a buff, add a certain tech, add an extra food, or hammer down the line instead of immediately. Now, that is also a change that I could see. Similar to, for example, right once you get to civil service, then if you have, in terms of a farm and it has access to water, you get +1 food. You're not going to get that right away as soon as you put the farm down, unless you're already at that technology, but that's a mid-level tech. So I like that idea, and that had not yet come up in the thread. And it's interesting the number of views on this that come up in the thread, because there are those that disagree outright. There are those that say maybe it's an issue, and then there are others that agree that it's OP, and some people say that this is fine. Just like there are those people that say it should change.
People have different opinions. Are you kidding?
I know.
Well, it depends what you're going for here. I mean, like, if you look at the balance between the civilizations in the game, well, you would use the term balance very loosely in the first place. And just picking a top-tier nation versus one that has a very late-game bonuses is, again, it's the same thing as Salt versus other starts. Now, there's something to be said about the luck factor of Salt, so maybe it could use a nerf. But if you're not playing around competitive balance, then what is the issue, though? Now, for stuff like Hall of Fame starts in multiplayer, I don't like resources like this that force you to re-roll for a good start or give somebody a very strong position outside a custom-made map. So it would be nice if there's something that lets you play a competitive game without a bunch of re-rolls. But just for a standard playthrough, I don't know that it is that important.
Part of those agreeing that it is OP and kind of and your point would be John C. Nunn. For single-player games, it doesn't really matter that a Salt start is so much better than a start with any other primary luxury. And all I can think of is he's maybe thinking more about in single-player you have AI, or at least more likely to have AI, and therefore they don't capitalize on it. Well, I think they capitalize on it, period, whether because it's incidental, because you think the AI is stupid and they just kind of... just by the very nature of having it, they don't have to think about doing anything else with it. They just have it, therefore. But I think that we've presented arguments, as presented in the thread or otherwise, that show that, no, this is not reasonably balanced as compared to other luxury resources. If you compare it to other luxury resources, again, the early availability and the extra sources that you're able to trade away so quickly, admittedly, if you have contact with someone, yes, there's always that. But it's more often than not that this is going to be too powerful, whether it's in the hands of a human player or an AI in a single-player and or multiplayer situation.
Civ's always had crap like this, though. Like, this is not a new...
No, and I think but a lot of my reaction to why this is so bad is Salt was introduced after Civ 5 was released. It's not like, oh, this was from the outset, and I kind of say, yes, there is testing that's done before the game, but not like the quote-unquote testing that is done once the game is out there. But I think it should have been reasonably anticipated that if you make a luxury resource that much earlier to be able to improve, and you have it in typically multiple quantities, if not in your starting location, then in your second or third city location that you've quickly scouted out, then this is something that should never have happened.
Yeah, if balance is the goal, it shouldn't have.
Yeah, it is nice to conquer people who started with the Salt because they will usually have lots of wonders because they they ran away first. But that's like the only scenario I like Salt in the neighborhood. If the guy with Salt is a Honor player, some aggressive guy, then you have a problem.
So basically you want to play against Shaka starting with Salt for fun.
Yeah.
Maximum pain.
Shaka with Salt near Mount Kilimanjaro, and find Skildorado. Oh my gosh, let the nightmares begin.
Oh, of course Shaka would find Skildorado.
He has luck. Duh.
Yeah, he got the Salt after all.
People are likely aware that all of the regular co-hosts on PolyCast and many of our guests also played Minecraft, which includes Polycraft, kind of an unofficial spin-off to PolyCast, which focuses on us playing Minecraft as opposed to Civ. Minecraft actually came up in this discussion. Craig Mack had said, in part, historical accuracy is not important to the game actually functioning well. And Securion said in response, I think that attitude would fit better in a Minecraft forum. And I'm like, what?
No, it fits perfectly well in the EU4 forum, because that's the argument constantly.
Civilization 4 Direct IP and Steamworks. Civilization 4 managed to get itself in the news, and not necessarily for a popular reason.
Yeah, in a really bad way.
I mean, this has a more or less happy ending, I would say. Just brief rewind. It was the 22nd of April that 2K Games announced that they were making online service changes for several titles as a result of GameSpy technology terminating its online service. So beginning on May 31st, and I think in effect it was actually the 1st or 2nd of June before they got around to flipping the switch, Borderlands 1, along with Civ 3, Civ 3 Conquest, Civ 3 Play the World, Civ 4, Civ 4 Warlords, Civ 4 Beyond the Sword, and Civilization 4 Colonization would temporarily go offline while the service was transitioned to Steamworks. On the 30th of May, the timeline was announced that Borderlands targeted for summer. Civilization 3, no date yet.
Wow, it's old.
It's rusty. Civilization 4 said its online functionality is currently targeted for release in June, and sure enough, that happened on the 5th of June.
Yeah, like 5 days later.
Yeah. As part of the May 30th update, 2K said, in addition, we've received many questions from fans who own editions of Borderlands PC and or Civ 4 that offer disc-based activation versus editions that included activation codes within packaging. In a convoluted way, they're talking about Civ 4 copies that were physical on CD. 2K is working on a solution for these fans.
Yeah.
Then it was announced on the 5th of June, the patch that replaces GameSpy with Steamworks for multiplayer functioning is now available.
Yeah.
Yeah. The game functions identically to the previous GameSpy version, with the exception that the direct IP option has been removed as it is no longer supported.
Whoops.
Wow.
How is that difficult to support? Like, that should be the easiest multiplayer option to support. What the heck?
To me, that was the stab in the gut, and then the salt on the wound, as salt, was if you own a physical disc version of Civ 4 and are interested in receiving the multiplayer update, please submit a support request. Would you like to receive an update that cripples part of what you already had? You know you do. Submit a support request. I'm like, wow, really?
Yeah.
Please ask us for the version that hurt you.
This elicited a response.
A response? I'm pretty sure the fans all gave a collective finger to the 2K for that.
A choice finger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lord Parkin, who was actually a pop-up video guest on episode 80 of PolyCast, posted on the 2K forums a message that said, Pit Boss games are hosted locally by individuals on a private server to which other players can connect via direct IP, and each game typically runs 6 to 12 months. Pit Boss games are not and have been connected through GameSpy or any third party. There is no practical reason why Pit Boss games needs to be affected by the end of GameSpy services. I'd like to urge any parties responsible to reconsider the removal of direct IP from Steam version of Civilization 4. It does not seem right to remove functionality from their games, which is entirely unrelated to GameSpy Steam services, especially since CD users still maintain full access to direct IP and Pit Boss. Please reintegrate direct IP functionality into the Steam version to accommodate the hundreds of Pit Boss enthusiasts. Hundreds of paying customers are waiting for an answer. So this was also on the 5th of June. And then on the 16th of June, 2K posts, due to request that direct IP multiplayer option remain available for Civilization 4 titles after the switch to Steamworks, we are making the original unsupported GameSpy version of the Civilization 4 titles available for download via Steam. We are making the original available. How about we are restoring?
Yeah.
We are making. Okay, marketing. This will allow players to continue direct IP games if they wish to do so. Yeah, players told you they wished to do so.
Yeah, dumbass.
Oh.
So if you're wondering how you do this, yes, there's an installation guide. Go to your Steam library, find Civ 4, right-click Properties, go to Beta tabs, and select Original Release.
Yep.
2K David, the 2K Games community manager, responded to the thread started by Lord Parkin and was chimed in with a number of people across many Civ fan sites to say that thanks for providing feedback on direct IP multiplayer. We've decided to put the pre-Steamworks version of Civ 4 on Steam as an optional beta download.
Uh-huh.
We hope this helps.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. People put in a request, and then you fulfill that request, and you hope this helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lord Parkin had said, thank you, David. It's very pleasing to see that 2K not only listens to feedback from fans, but also acts on it, and relatively promptly, too. Your efforts are greatly appreciated. I liked Canuck Soldier's response after that, who is a 6-time guest on PolyCast to date, by the way, where he says, "Thanks for the support, David, and please do this for Civ 3 from the start once 2K migrates it to Steam as well."
Yeah.
What is the lesson that can be learned here? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Oh, there we go.
Try not fixing it.
Because we kind of got to, you actually had to go out of your way to disable it.
Yep.
And I know going out of your way is a relative term, but they actually had to go and do that.
Yeah.
But they didn't have to do anything because it was not affected by this change. What? Mm-hmm. I know everybody makes mistakes, but this was just, you dropped the ball on this. I mean, I'm glad you fixed your problem, but it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Come on.
Yeah.
Why change it? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
I don't know. Maybe this was some publicity is better than no publicity at all because of Steamworks. I don't know. That backfired.
Yep.
Rise of Nations re-released as Extended Edition. This month it's already happened. Rise of Nations, originally released in 2003 by the now-defunct developer Big Huge Games, which was founded by Civilization II designer Brian Reynolds, has been re-released and is now known as Extended Edition, which also includes the Thrones and Patriots expansion from 2004. There's no gameplay changes at all. But there is Twitch integration, so players can stream their matches online. It will also support cloud saves, trading cards, and yes, achievements. This all sounds akin to Steam. You would be correct, as in fact it's being made available exclusively on Steam and makes use of Steamworks, tied into another topic, look at that, for multiplayer matches, including ranked matches. And Rise of Nations, like a number of Civilization titles before 5, used GameSpy initially for multiplayer matchmaking, but this kind of can't happen anymore because it kind of doesn't exist anymore, and by that meaning it doesn't exist at all.
Yep.
The Rise of Nations Extended Edition was developed by Skybox Lab for Microsoft Studios.
Call in today. In North America, the number is 301-637-7659.
That's 301-637-POLY.
In Europe, 44121-288-7659. That's 44121-288-POLY.
The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
For more information on PolyCast,
our sibling shows Modcast, Revcast, and Turncast,
or about PolyCast in general,
log on to the series' official website at thepolycast.net.
Yep, Dan's being confusing. We hit 200 and he decided, yeah, you know what? Releasing every episode one after another? No, that doesn't make sense. We're not even going to record one after another. We'll just record the even numbers, and the odd numbers will just be random stuff from before.
That's now coming to an end, because episode 205 will be a quote-unquote actual show.
Wait, we're on an actual show?
It was just in celebration of 200 episodes, so that there were 5 successive weeks of new PolyCast episodes.
Ah.
I think our fans need some recovery time, quite frankly. It's probably too much of a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little decadence now and then.
Yes, decadence. That is the appropriate word, Phil. You can stay for another week.
Just what everyone wanted.
I believe this does take us to the closing. Aww. It's like an adorable puppy, only not adorable and not a puppy.
Are you going to shoot it? Because that's kind of mean.
Whoa. Leave Rover alone.
Okay, and that's how we're going to end this episode. See ya.
I was tempted to say something like this was episode 204 of PuppyCast.
Yeah.
But in actuality, this has been episode 204 of PolyCast. And of course, with me as usual is Dan.
Always the niggle wiggle.
Imagine.
It's lucky it's Dan's birthday. Otherwise, he'd get sued.
Yeah, seriously. This is getting crazy. The me and team.
Come see me for some discount nerve stapling. I'll hook you up.
Probably literally. And our guest, Bruno.
I'm still a little nervous.
That is a normal reaction to a first-time PolyCast, yes.
Bye, everybody.
This is not your stream. Stop it.
I'll show you a stream.
Hey-o.
No, thank you.
Oh, and apparently the Star of Hope would listen to PolyCast.
More fun and friendly than PolyCast.
Record date June 21st, 2014. Civilization Beyond Earth E3 clips, courtesy Zeno Eno. Rise of Nations music, copyright Microsoft Game Studios. Civilization 4, 5, and Beyond Earth sound clips, copyright Take-Two Interactive.
Copyright Civilized Communication at civcom.net.